The story begins by showing us Lloyd, a young man who lost everything during a battle against the Demon Lord. When the powerful mage Merlin finds him standing still, she feels guilty. It was her carelessness that caused the destruction. To make up for her mistake, she decides to take Lloyd in, offering him a new home. And while he stays with her, Merlin begins to train him in magic. The first spell is the flame spell. Her method? Show the spell for about 3 seconds and warn. If you don't replicate it, you'll go to bed hungry. Against all odds, when night falls, Lloyd manages to light a small flame in the palm of his hand. He proudly shows it, but Merlin, unimpressed, calls his fire a little torch and unleashes a wall of flames that nearly burns the boy's eyebrows. She still lets him have dinner, because at least he learned the spell. The next day, it's time for the water magic lesson. Merlin demonstrates by planting her foot on the ground and creating a jet of water. Lloyd tries and at best just wets the ground a little, but he smiles happily. Merlin ignores this initial effort and drenches him completely, showing what real water magic looks like. The training continues. Lloyd puts in effort. Merlin scolds every mistake. But in winter, all that rigor pays off. He can now create a snow sculpture of Merlin herself with just a finger gesture. She likes it, it's thoughtful, but she can't drop her serious demeanor. So she takes the sculpture, surrounds Lloyd with it, and lifts him about 9 meters into the air to demonstrate the real power of snow manipulation. The sculpture melts, Lloyd falls, but in the end, they both understand each other's strength and commitment. As soon as he recovers, he promises to train even harder, and Merlin smiles, satisfied. Months later, one morning, Merlin is slouched on the couch, deathly hungover after drinking too much the night before. Lloyd shows up worried, asks if she's okay, and without thinking, places his hand on her forehead, using his white magic to heal her. In seconds, she feels revitalized. She stands and hugs him, thanking him. But she quickly says it's time to get back to training, and drags Lloyd back outside. This routine repeats for years. Until one day, Merlin receives a book in the mail that leaves her worried. At that moment, Lloyd knocks on the door to say that dinner is ready. Merlin goes to pick up the book, but accidentally drops it in front of Lloyd. He bends down to help, and, upon touching the book, his mind is flooded with a whirlwind of knowledge. He faints, stunned. Merlin realizes the boy shows signs of being the chosen one. She puts him to bed, and worried that he might make the same mistakes she did, kisses his forehead and casts a gentle spell to prevent him from becoming too arrogant. The next day, training resumes in the forest. Merlin teaches Lloyd white magic again. He makes a fruit ripen and become juicy, earning praise. But she wants him to understand how far he still has to go. She places her hand on a tree, uses white magic, and makes everything grow, alive and green, showing that even with progress, the journey is only beginning. Later that night, Merlin is helping Lloyd with his studies and comments on certain orcs who have mastered a rare magic capable of controlling monsters. While reading, Lloyd stumbles upon a passage about ancient magic, but as he mentions it, the mood shifts. Merlin's expression darkens, and she says he doesn't need to learn that kind of magic. In other lessons, she teaches him to summon his magic staff as quickly as possible. Since Lloyd takes too long, she knocks him down with her own staff. Then she makes it clear, one must never slack off in training, no matter how much they've progressed. Lloyd promises to stay strong. Right after that, the lesson is about magic stones. Merlin explains that they're a crystallized form of magic and have the power to transform nearby objects into other magic stones. Years pass. One day, in the middle of a lesson, she takes Lloyd to a remote forest, hands him a knife, and orders, "Survive and come home alone." And before he can say anything, she disappears. Alone and confused, Lloyd barely has time to think before he's attacked by a white wolf. He runs and hides under a tree. He thinks his white magic wouldn't be enough against such a monster, so he decides to flee and avoid confrontations at all costs. Using a spell to scan the area, he realizes he's too far from home. He has no choice. He must cross the forest slowly and cautiously. At night, he studies his spells to improve as much as possible. Days go by like this until, in a careless moment, he steps on a branch and attracts a giant spider. He panics and runs, using an acceleration spell to shake it off. He finally gets home, but collapses from exhaustion at the door. Merlin finds him and, despite the scare, is proud to see he made it on his own. A few years later, while Lloyd is cleaning, he sees a book about a city on Merlin's table. Curious, he asks if he can borrow it. She allows it. By now, he's completed practically all of his training, so he no longer needs constant lessons. But now, almost every day, Merlin calls on him to help her create new spells. After all, Lloyd is brilliant at it. She even treats him as an equal nowadays. But he hasn't slept all week, forced to stay up testing spells late into the night. Tired of the pressure and curious about urban life, he makes a bold decision. The next morning, Merlin goes to his room to ask for help with yet another magical study. But Lloyd isn't there. Seeing the book about the city on the table, she immediately understands where he went. Meanwhile, Lloyd arrives in the city for the first time. Walking through the streets, he is impressed by the movement and rhythm of urban life. With the little money he had, he buys a piece of bread, and is soon left with no coins at all. He realizes he needs a job, and then, by luck, a recruitment poster for adventurers hits him square in the face. He decides to sign up. What Lloyd doesn't realize is that a mysterious man is following him from a distance, watching every step with interest. After joining a group of adventurers, Lloyd climbs to the top of the castle with his new team to face a gigantic cyclops. During the fight, the group's leader, Alan, shouts to the healer, Sheena, that he needs healing. As Sheena prepares to cast the healing spell, Lloyd activates a boost spell that enhances the group's stats, and everyone feels renewed. But no one notices that he was the one who did it, since he doesn't say anything. With the boost, the archer hits the Cyclops' eye. Mag blocks a punch with ease and is surprised by her own strength. Alan, on the other hand, doesn't question the sudden power and finishes off the Cyclops thinking it was all his doing. Only the team's knight seems to suspect Lloyd had something to do with their sudden strength. With the Cyclops defeated, the group returns to the city, where Alan is hailed as a hero. Apparently, monsters like that are nearly impossible to defeat, and no one else had managed to do it. The reward is huge, but Alan gives Lloyd only 5 coins, saying the amount is low because he's just a rookie. Lloyd accepts without complaint. When Alan proposes a toast, Lloyd refuses, saying he prefers not to drink. The group's mage gets annoyed, but Alan shrugs it off, saying they can easily find another white mage, and that Lloyd didn't help all that much anyway. Meanwhile, at Merlin's house, the mysterious man who had been observing Lloyd appears. Merlin asks if there's any news about the boy, and Will tells her he arrived in the city and joined a group of heroes. Merlin is relieved to hear Lloyd is doing well. She already believed it was time for him to venture out on his own and see the world. As long as he doesn't make the same mistakes she once made, she believes he'll be fine. When Will asks if she still regrets what happened that day, Merlin's expression hardens, overcome with guilt. She remembers the moment the demon lord self-destructed just to get his hands on a magical book, a move she hadn't foreseen. The explosion destroyed the entire village and killed everyone nearby, including herself. It was only thanks to Kai Biel, a teammate who used powerful ancient magic, that everyone was revived. But it cost Biel her life. Since then, Merlin has carried that guilt. Back to Lloyd's adventures, he remains in the hero group. Whenever the team is in battle, it's he who casts support spells to make the fights easier. Because of this, the group hardly loses any battle and is always at the peak of their strength. But no one realizes how much Lloyd is holding everything together. Later, Rena is studying about defense when Alan appears, curious. She explains that she's puzzled. The monster's attacks aren't affecting her shield like before. Alan says he also feels stronger lately, but thinks it's due to his own talent. Rena reminds him that he hasn't even been training, so the sudden increase in strength doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, in the forest, a group of guards finishes their night patrol when one of them screams in pain. His colleague looks over and sees a gigantic golem looming over him. In that moment, he understands he might die for a low-paying job. The next morning, the captain of the guard looks for Alan asking for help. He reports that the guards from the previous night were brutally murdered. Alan agrees immediately. He thinks defeating a golem won't be difficult. Later, the group heads to the site of the attack. Thanks to Lloyd's tracking magic, they manage to locate the golem hidden in a cave behind a waterfall. With Lloyd providing support, the team defeats the golem with ease. But in the shadows, a demon appears and begins creating another magical creature using stones from the ceiling. Lloyd watches the demon closely and realizes he's using his staff along with a magic stone to control the golem. Knowing how dangerous these stones are, he understands he needs to act quickly before something goes very wrong. He casts a spell that increases accuracy and orders Lulu to shoot an arrow at the demon. Lulu is surprised by the sudden command, especially since the target is hidden behind a wall. But even so, she fires. Somehow, the arrow hits perfectly. Immediately after, Lloyd tells Mia to teleport the team to him. As soon as they arrive, he casts a spell to seal the demon's powers. Alan, annoyed that Lloyd is taking charge and giving orders, decides to show who's really in command. He charges in to deliver the final blow to the golem by himself. Seeing this, Lloyd casts a speed spell on himself and runs to push Alan away, just a second before the golem smashes the spot where his head would have been. Even after having his life saved by Lloyd, Alan doesn't thank him. On the contrary, he yells at Lloyd for interfering. Then he finishes off the golem. When they return to the city, Alan fires Lloyd from the group, accusing him of being annoying, lazy, and useless. And, because of everything he heard from Merlin over the years, about his abilities never being good enough, Lloyd automatically assumes he really is the problem. He agrees to leave the team without protest. In the following days, he tries to find a new group to join, but it's complicated. Most groups already have white mages, and the demand for that type of mage is low. Still, by a twist of fate, a girl named Ui shows up desperately looking for a white mage. As soon as she finds Lloyd, she grabs his hand and begs him to join her group. Lloyd walks through the city streets, still gripped by melancholy after being dismissed from his team by Alan. He recalls the harsh words he heard, in which Alan accused him of being a useless white mage, someone who only hides behind the group and adds nothing during battles. That his only usefulness is healing, and that even Sheena fulfills that role more effectively. Lloyd wonders if Alan really believes he has no abilities, but Alan ignores him and tells him to think whatever he wants, then walks away. As he leaves, the other girls, except Sheena, do not hide their joy at seeing what they call a failure out of the group. Directionless, Lloyd heads to the city center, where he spots a fountain with a statue that strongly reminds him of his master, awakening in him a profound longing. On the other side, a group of adventurers prepares to raid a bandit hideout. It's an A-rank mission, requiring great caution. Ginger and her team are ready, although Crumb seems disturbed and utterly unmotivated to face the challenge. Despite that, they set off for the attack, trying to surprise the bandits before they can react. The mage Silica intones a powerful chant before casting her magic. Noticing the situation, one of the enemies orders his companions to wait until the spell ends to attack. They advance under cover, and as soon as Silica finishes and looks exhausted, they charge. But Cruz, the team's archer, shields Silica from afar, and with impeccable precision, eliminates the foes with a single arrow shot. The team displays an impressive balance. Yui, the swordswoman and leader, fights with firmness and confidence, even when making mistakes. The tank Daggers promptly covers her with his shield. Crumb, with her magic, increases Daggers' strength, and this reinforcement allows him to overpower the enemies, securing the group's victory. The bandit leader panics and tries to escape. However, Yui intercepts him and demands his immediate surrender. The man questions who she is and why they were attacked until he notices the golden pendant on her neck, a symbol of an S-rank adventurer. And not just her, the whole group is at that level. They are recognized and respected figures. In a final attempt, the boss decides to use his trump card. With his staff, he summons a giant golem that emerges from the ground. Against that monster, magic becomes useless, leaving Crumb and Silica practically inoperative. Cruz also doubts his arrows will have any effect. Only Yui and Daggers remain for direct combat. Yui moves with determination and delivers a strong blow, but the golem barely flinches. Crumb, apathetic from the start, doesn't respond to Yui's commands. Yui must shout hard for her to snap out of it. Finally, Crumb casts the physical strength buff. Yui receives a massive energy boost, and with that, she cleaves the golem in half with a single strike. Mission complete. All bandits are captured, including the leader. Yui approaches Crumb to talk about what happened. Crumb apologizes and says she no longer considers herself worthy of being an adventurer. Yui understands Crumb's state, who seems distressed because of her sister Sylvie. Yui asks how Sylvie has been lately, but before she can answer, the scene returns to Lloyd, who is already on his third day without finding a spot in any team. Until he hears a request at the counter for a white mage, and to his surprise, it's Yui looking, apparently having already removed Crumb from the team. Lloyd sees the chance before him and tells Yui that he is a white mage. She doesn't even ask his level, she just takes his hand and leads him immediately to the team's base. Without delay, she introduces him to the team and welcomes him, even before he's accepted to join. Yui's companions immediately notice that she brought him without explaining anything, something she tends to do. Cruz notes they're in a hurry because they received an urgent mission, and with Crumb gone, they're without a white mage. Nobody believes Lloyd is a fitting replacement. He himself doesn't feel capable of proving otherwise, especially after discovering he is facing S-rank adventurers. Although Lloyd has already lost faith in himself, Yui insists he show his magic. He believes he will disappoint them, but decides to try. He conjures a staff using storage magic, which already astonishes the group. Then, without even chanting, he casts a series of physical strength buff spells. At first, no one notices a difference, but Yui decides to test anyway. With a single sword movement, she slices through a tree as thick as butter, and everyone is left speechless. Lloyd explains that he didn't use just one physical buff spell, but several simultaneous enchantments that drastically increased Yui's power. That settles any doubt. Crumb doesn't come close to his level, even though Lloyd is not aware of his own capability. He says he cast 5 different buff spells because he thought that if he used just one on experienced adventurers, it'd seem like too little. Knowing they are top tier, he only wanted to impress them. However, seeing their surprised faces, he believes he failed and that his magic was mediocre. Being constantly judged diminishes self-esteem, and in Lloyd's case, that self-esteem was already in ruins. Believing he didn't manage to impress, he apologizes, says he doesn't want to be a burden, and walks away. The group remains silent for a few moments, until Yui reacts and shouts, forcefully asking him to return. Lloyd comes back only to hear what they have to say. He shares his story, where he came from and how he was expelled from the Heroes team for being considered useless. Yui is surprised to learn he was part of the Heroes team, but Lloyd asks them not to be impressed. In the end, he doesn't see himself as talented. His self-confidence is shattered. He suggests they call his former white mage back, since that would be better for everyone. The group then tells him about Crumb. She was dedicated, but had a sick sister, Sylvie. Although she worked as an adventurer, she cared for her sister at the same time. Lately, exhaustion became extreme and affected her performance. In the last mission, Crumb got distracted and almost compromised the entire team. Still, everyone was willing to keep her. But Crumb, worried about the others' safety, decided to leave on her own. The group usually manages without a white mage, but for high-level missions like A-class ones, that support becomes vital. Although Crumb's departure was a blow, they consider her a friend as well as a teammate. Yue confesses that she worries about her, and the others share the same feeling. Lloyd then realizes that these adventurers nurture real bonds and wonders if they treat Crumb more as a friend than as a mission partner. Upon hearing the question, everyone says yes. That makes Lloyd reflect on how lucky she is to have such loyal companions, something he never had on his former team. Lloyd asks what Sylvie's illness is and learns she's slowly being turned to magical stone. He remembers when he studied magical stones with his master and asked if that condition could be cured. The master had said yes. Faced with the possibility of helping, Lloyd asks Yui to bring him to the Torum family home. Upon arrival, Crumb opens the door. They sit to talk and he asks directly about the illness. She reveals that both she and her sister were adventurers. Once, on a mission, Sylvie was gravely injured. Crumb didn't witness the event. She only found her already hurt. When Lloyd again asks about the nature of the condition, Crumb decides to take them to Sylvie's room. As soon as the door is opened, Lloyd senses intense magic emanating from the room. Crumb approaches and removes a sheet covering her sister's body, revealing that her arms and legs were already turned to stone. She explains that over time, Sylvie will be fully petrified. Lloyd then says he believes he can help her, but Crumb reacts with disbelief. She had already consulted several experienced mages, and none could reverse the process, so she doubts a mere white mage can change that. Lloyd asks if the injury happened in a cave, and Crumb, surprised, confirms. He examines the place where the petrification began and identifies an excess of magical energy as the cause of the problem. Despite doubts, he asserts that his master said it is possible to reverse the process. Yui also asks Crumb to trust Lloyd. Given that, she allows him to try. Lloyd brings his staff, prepares the spell, and invokes a powerful magic that leaves him visibly exhausted. He explains that he is trying to reduce the excess magical power in Sylvie's body because this accumulation is what causes the transformation to stone. Then he casts a healing spell. Crumb watches with admiration and comments that the spell isn't common. Lloyd confirms that it is slightly different and that it consumes more magical energy, but insists that it is a basic healing spell. Yui asks Crumb what she thinks, and she admits that his magic is extraordinary. It's impressive to see Lloyd maintain two distinct magics at the same time with such precision and mental resilience. Yui points to Sylvie's body, which slowly returns to normal. Crumb runs to her and holds her hand, seeing her sister return to her natural state. Everyone is amazed and relieved. Crumb, moved, thanks him deeply, but says she cannot return to the group. Now that Sylvie is well, they intend to continue adventuring together. She offers to take them to dinner in gratitude. She tells Lloyd that she trusts the group will be in good hands with him. Lloyd, however, replies that he isn't part of the team yet, and she's surprised that he still doubts himself. During dinner, Yui shares with everyone what Lloyd did for Sylvie. Even with the praise, he continues to believe he didn't do anything remarkable, which leads Yui to ask him to stop belittling himself. She reinforces that he has been doing very well, but Lloyd still doesn't recognize his own worth. He apologizes for not being able to convince Crumb to return to the group, but they assure him that it's not something he should worry about now. They want to celebrate first, before thinking about what comes next. The conversation then turns to the future, and Lloyd reflects on his old hero team and how he felt alongside them, and how he feels now, with these new people. He finally asks if he can join the group, surprising everyone since he had refused before. To his surprise, they reveal they also wanted to work with him. Thus, Lloyd is officially accepted as part of the team.